This is Dan Schneider. On this Dan Schneider video interview, I'm talking with documentary and independent filmmaker Erik Swanson. We'll be talking about his YouTube channel and his work. This is Dan Schneider, and I'm speaking with Erik Swanson. He has a YouTube channel in his own name where he posts his videos and documentaries and all sorts of other stuff. Like I usually want to do, I like to let my guests have the final or the first word on themselves. So, Erik, if you could give a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, is your own YouTube channel, is that your private stuff? Are you a gun for hire that has a regular job, for a network or something?
Well, yeah, my name's Erik Swanson. I use my middle initial K because there's apparently a gazillion people with the same name as me, and one of them happens to be a professional baseball player. So I'm hard to compete against that with
Well, but believe me,
certain
there's a
entities.
Dan Schneider out there that's fairly infamous if you've seen with young kids TV shows. So you got it better than I do.
Um, but yeah, I make documentaries and independent films. My YouTube channel it's all my own personal work. I used to um, yeah, like you had said, kind of be a gun for hire. I kind of freelanced in television for probably about 20, a little over 20 years. Um, and 3 years ago, I had always made independent films. The first one I made a couple shorts, music videos for friends and bands. And then the first feature length film, I started in, I want to say 2007. I didn't finish it until 2008 I'm sorry, 2015. It took me 8 years. So the first things I ever uploaded to YouTube were like just teasers for that. It was a documentary about skiing and snowboarding. Um, and that was how I first started using YouTube. Then 3 years ago, it was actually on January 1st. I don't want to say it was a New Year's resolution, but I just happened to say, you know what, I'm gonna give YouTube a chance for a year. I'll upload one video a month and see what happens. And 7 months later, I was fortunate. I had a video go viral, and my channel got monetized. I was still freelancing at that time. I was actually um, doing a bunch of things. I had, done some TV work. I designed some stuff for a show that was on Comedy Central. I had made a bunch of videos for a marketing department at a local college. And then after that, I was like, hey, you know what? This has been my passion my entire life ever since I was a kid, when I first got into drawing and painting. And, then that led me into animation and filmmaking. And my whole life, I've just wanted to, be able to make a living from what I create, and it's to at least a modest degree somewhat happening. I do have to probably start picking up some freelance gigs here and there to supplement my income. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I definitely love doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you got a handful, 5 or 6 videos that are over 1 million views. Most of them are probably in the 10 to 20,000 range of the last couple of years. Do you ever worry? You use the term viral, and I know I don't get enough views to monetize it. My website, Cosmoetica, 10, 12 years ago was big there, but there was no way to monetize that kind of thing. Do you ever worry, though, that if you get a video that had 100 million views or whatnot, that you would fall into a rut to just be repeating yourself? Because one of the things I noticed with quote unquote viral videos and their makers is that oftentimes they're doing a video on whatever the subject might be, and then they do a slightly different version. Or they do, they do iterations of the same thing over, and they fall into a rut. And the thing that made them a unique channel to begin with is gone.
I actually, probably to my own detriment, I am consciously not having every video be the same. So even if I revisit a subject,
Yeah.
I make sure that there is one video between the two that are the same, there's a video in the middle that is wildly different.
Mm.
Just because it's like like every human being, to me, it's silly that on YouTube, the idea is your channel should only cover one topic. To me, I'm just like everybody else on the planet where I have multiple interests and I want to explore all of those interests. And um, if I make a documentary about, excuse me, homeless people or people living in a unique situation, I put that out 1 month, and then a month or month and a half later, I put out a documentary about people who are hunting for Bigfoot. To me, it's actually the same thing. It's about exploring the people that we share this planet with.
So one of the things that did first get me attracted to your channel a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and then generally speaking, I don't subscribe to channels because that tends to narrow your view of what's sent to you. I probably wouldn't have found your videos a few years ago if I had done that and just gotten sports videos or whatever it might be. But one of the things that did attract me was the videos that you did on some of the people who were homeless in New York City and living in the subways. I'm from New York, if you couldn't tell, and I knew kids. I knew homeless kids back in the late '60s, early '70s, living underneath the subways and whatnot, the sewers in the outer boroughs. And people for many years would tell me, "Oh, that's not an issue. That people there's maybe a handful of bums that live down there." But it's interesting because your video follows a guy. I think you did a video of him over the two videos or several over the course of several years where you came back and found him. And I found it very interesting how he sets up his own little world down there, and eventually now he's dead. This was maybe 10 years ago or whatever it was, and all the other people have been sort of cleared out in a sort of urban reclamation kind of thing. What drew you to that particular angle, their tale to begin with?
Well, for whatever reason, I think just curiosity, I've always, um, just found an interest in what led a person to wind up living on the streets, or living outdoors. And one day I was working at a news network in New York City, and I was working late. I think I probably left work at like 11 at night or midnight. Got on the subway to go home, and I saw this guy carrying a bag over his shoulder, walk down the subway platform, jump down onto the tracks, and head down the tunnel. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. Like living in New York, and I'm originally from New York State, not the city,
Yeah.
but still, you hear all these urban legends about the mole people and people living in the tunnels under the city. I had always thought it was just a myth. And then it turned out, oh wow, this is real. And I basically just couldn't couldn't get that out of my head. So I started going around and looking to find out, well, how can I find out more about this? How can I find where these folks might actually be? And eventually I learned about that tunnel there. There's been New York Times articles and um, other documentaries. There was a Jerry Springer episode about it. So I decided, you know what, I think the very first time I went there, I went to the north end of the tunnel, which is up at about 125th Street, and I walked the entire length. And then when I got to the south end, there was actually a guy standing there.
So, was did you go alone or do you have someone with you? Because that could be a very dangerous thing.
The first time I actually went alone.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was pretty scary, I'll tell you that. It's funny because this was 2007 or 8, I
Yeah.
think. Might have been 2008, but so like now, whatever, 17, 16, 17 years later, like that's not something I would probably do by myself anymore. When it's like you feel like you're invincible when you're younger.
So the initial impulse was just to find out what was being done. What you weren't on a social crusade.
No, not really. It was just kind of I'm just like super curious, you know. So it was kind of to just learn more about this. You know, what people are living under the tunnels. Why are they doing it? What is it like? Um, you know, how did they get there? What led them to get there? How did they even find out to go live under there? Just a basically curiosity. Yeah, it's not. You know, I think that there are, you know, my own social conscience has opinions on these things, but to some degree, it's like now my outlook is like, hey, look, you know, the yes, there are some homeless people, unhoused people, whatever folks want to call them, that fit negative stereotypes, but there's also a lot of folks out there who do not. And you know, like we're there's what I think 8 billion people on the planet,
Mm.
and everybody's different. Everybody lives a different life, and you know, this happens to be some of the people that you share the planet with. You know.
Was the series contingent basically upon the fellow, I forget his name, who was the main character that you focused on? There were a few people, others that are mentioned, but did you film, say, like 30 different people and just sort of condense it down to this one guy who was sort of emblematic of the issue, or was he just initially like, this is the guy I want?
Um, well, it was basically I only met about 3 or 4 people,
Uh-huh.
and only two of them were willing to let me film them. So that kind of dictated it. I wanted to, um, ideally, my initial idea, you know, back in 2008, was to just keep going back there. Um, but you know, they have their own lives and their own struggles and hustle that they're trying to do. You know, the one guy, Walter, we would go out canning once a week, sell books on the street to try to make some money. And a couple of times I would go down there and nobody was there. And then, you know, my own life trying to, you know, I still have to go to work and pay bills and, you know, things just. And then I found out as well that there was another documentary already about this. So that kind of discouraged me a little bit. So it's like, you know, just other things came up that I, for various reasons, wasn't able to, you know, continue following it to the way that I initially had hoped.
What is the difference process wise, if there is one, between doing a video or a documentary about a contemporary thing like these homeless people that live there and doing something based in history, because you have some history videos as well? Is it more research with the history stuff and then trying to put it in some kind of a box, whereas the homeless people, you basically have the story right in front of you, you just have to pare it away?
Yeah, with the history stuff, there's definitely a lot more research. So, like one that I did about the siege of Fort William Henry, that I spent, I mean, easily a couple of months just reading anything I could about the subject, reading books, um, history books. But then what that did, I was basically just going through their bibliography and finding their primary sources and saying, oh, okay, there's a journal from soldier who was at this historic battle. I need to find that, hunting that down. And even that with the history stuff, like I have historians and amateur historians and archaeologists interview clips in that documentary, but my ideal scenario is to include more of the human element and use the first-hand accounts of the people who were actually at the battle to tell the story. Um, so I relied on a lot of written documents, you know, from that was a battle against the British and the French during colonial America. So, you know, French journals from the French general, British journals from the British colonials and the, you know, British soldiers who were at the battle, and kind of tried to let them tell the story. And even in that instance, because with anything, um, there is no definitive answer, even with history. So, like, my favorite part of that documentary is where I have a historic account from a British guy, or I think he was actually a colonial, if I remember correctly, saying one thing about the battle, and then right afterwards, I have a French account where he's saying something that directly contradicts it. And it's like, well, perhaps they were in different locations during the battle, and that's why they have conflicting accounts. Or perhaps, the British guy wants to make the French look bad, and the French guy wants to make the French look good, and that's why they have conflicting accounts, just to show that even with something that, you could research, you could read every single firsthand account on a piece of history, doesn't mean that's 100% what actually happened.
You also have some videos that look like they're snippets from projects that are ongoing that you haven't put all together yet. For example, I'm just looking here. You have one about Pilgrim Psychiatric Center and Creedmoor Psychiatric Hospital. I grew up in Queens, so Creedmoor, when we were a kid, you say, "Oh, we'll send you off to Creedmoor." Was that part of like a film that you were planning to do about psychiatric hospitals, the pros and cons?
That was going to be more of like a some of them the oh no, I haven't actually put any of that out. I also have some footage of Kings Park Hospital out on Long Island.
Mm.
Some of those were actually just me going and exploring and practicing my camera work, practicing filmmaking.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that footage is also from like 2008, 2009. I just never did anything with it. I was still trying to find my footing, learning, making mistakes, finding out, what was my style of documentary storytelling and whatnot. And like, yes, I did want to make them longer projects, but it was more going to be um, just about like the exploration and historic aspects as opposed to, you know, passing any judgment on, the old state hospital system.
So basically, those are sort of just that would be the equivalent of a writer just having a few good lines, and then I can't put this in a poem, I can't get it into a play, but just I've got it there someday that you may go back to it, use 10 seconds of it in a later video or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's kind of like when like I'll compare it to like, well, drawing, practicing a sport, anything. It's like if you're a basketball player and you're practicing your free throw shots, you're doing it just to practice. You're not doing it to, show off that you can make a free throw. You don't show off until the game when you actually make the free throw.
Eric, one of the most interesting series of videos on your site for me was the series you did around the San Francisco Bay, which is sort of almost the antithesis of the underground people. These are people who live on the water. Some of them have really boats that look as in bad shape as some of the underground hovels that you found. But it's one of those kinds of stories that people living underground seem sexy. Ooh, the mole people. It's like the old H.G. Wells story about the underground dwellers. Whereas these are people that just, for whatever reason, had their boats and they're sort of living offshore, and are they subject to the same rules as the people on land? And you did a series of them. Is that going to be a larger project? Because that seems to me something that is very unique.
Yeah, that's going to be ultimately, at the very least, a feature length documentary. And actually, in about another month, I'm going to make another video in that series to kind of give an update on what's been going on out there. I keep in touch with a lot of those folks, talk to them, or message with them several times a week, actually. And a lot of them, I would consider them my friends. They're just super nice people, you know, just struggling to get by. And they found this unique opportunity of how to live out on a bay on a boat, and took advantage of it. And now the government is, for various reasons, trying to remove them. Um, but yeah, I was out there for a month. Um, I went out there for 3 weeks over this last summer. Then in the fall, I was out there for a month, and I'm gonna, do, like I said, do an update with some of that footage. Um, and I would like to get back out there. Hopefully, I just need to kind of find the resources. I literally live all the way across the country, and plane tickets aren't necessarily cheap. Where
Are
these
you
people
based in
live
New
is,
York? Are you based in New York?
yeah,
Okay.
where these people live is the most expensive county in the country.
Mm.
So even, they were generous, and another friend of mine was generous and put me up on her houseboat for a few weeks. They put me up on one of their sailboats for about 3 weeks to a month. But even with that, it's just expensive, and all the while I'm still having to pay my own rent and electric. Um, but yeah, that will be part of an ongoing project or a longer feature length documentary, perhaps more of like a kind of limited series, like would be on a streaming platform or something. I have to really dig into the footage and figure out what's the best, most compelling way to tell the story. There's a lot of aspects to it, with the people being removed, the people being put into Section 8 housing. I was able to secure some interviews with the Richardson Bay Regional Agency, which is the county agency that is removing the people from the bay. Then there's a larger agency that encompasses all of San Francisco Bay that I'm still trying to secure an interview with. So, there's it. There's many aspects, and the story is still ongoing, and I'm hopeful to be able to, and I intend to be able to continue following it the best that I can.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who recently completed a documentary about this friend of mine who is a really great poet, and he died a few years ago, and he had mental problems and this and that, and I know that the structural the way that the movie system, if you will, is structured is that it's very difficult for independent films to get to a larger platform, to get it into, say, even small arts theaters around the country. What has been your experience over the years with certain projects? Have you tried going the film festival route? Because for many indie filmmakers, they don't think that highly, that it's more of a scam, that maybe you should try other platforms like, the Tubies or the whatever maybe you could get on.
Yeah, I have been the official rejection of multiple film festivals. I've submitted. I honestly, I like you just mentioned. I feel like it's a waste of money. It's a scam. It's a waste of time. Um, I will use the Siege of Fort William Henry documentary. I didn't aim for Sundance. You know what I mean? I set my
Yeah.
sights low with that documentary. I was like, you know what? I'll try to. I think it's good. I'll try to get it into even regional documentaries where the there was a regional connection to where this historic battle took
Yeah.
place. I didn't get into any of them. And then I would go and see that, oh, there was one of them was literally a 10-minute, art house film with a guy on a telephone for
Mm.
10 minutes sitting on his couch. And it's like, well, that got in. But then this documentary has subsequently been one of my most financially successful documentaries.
Mm.
I don't, it's on Tubi, it's on Amazon. Um, it's been licensed to it's on History Fix and other
And this is the
streaming.
Fort William.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has over 500,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like, you know what? To me, um, it is a very closed off thing. Like, there's no way to get to there's no way to get to Netflix. There's no way to get to Tubi without a middleman.
It did.
Um, and for me, like YouTube, yes, it has its challenges. There's things I wish could be changed about it, but there are many benefits where it's like the day I'm done making something, I can put it out into the world, and I, at the very least, have the potential to earn some money immediately. I don't have to wait 6 months to find out I didn't get into a film festival and all of this other, this in this day and age, there's no reason for all of this gatekeeping and just this silly process of, not being able to have access to analytics or direct access to an audience or, um, you know, just connect with a platform to say, hey, I have this body of work. Are you interested?
And speaking of YouTube, have you had issues with copyright claims or that you may have said something that's triggers someone, that kind of thing?
I fortunately, knock on wood, I for the most part, I've had people steal my work in the past. 20 something years ago, I had a coworker steal some of my motion graphics and put it on his reel. Um, so I am like very, very opposed to, uh, utilizing other people's stuff unless it's absolutely necessary. So the Mole People videos are a perfect example. I showed quick clips of when I mentioned that there was a episode of Jerry Springer about people living in that tunnel. I showed a quick clip, 10 seconds maybe.
Yeah.
I just put out a documentary based on footage that I shot at the protests outside the 2016 political conventions. And to give it context, I had to use news clips but I try to keep them all under 20 seconds. I try to minimize it. And 90% of that documentary is things that I made on my own. My viewpoint is if your documentary, my documentary, cannot stand on its own without these clips, then you shouldn't, without using someone else's stuff, you shouldn't be making it. Like, yes, some of it's necessary to give context, but I try to use so little that there's no denying that I most likely fall under fair use.
Now, this is the only video of yours of the last 12 or 15 that I haven't seen, is the one a couple of days ago you had about Trump, Divided We Stand. What exactly is that about? And with Trump now in office, do you feel that there's going to be a crackdown on anyone who does anything about him that isn't totally laudatory?
Honestly, I don't think so. And this documentary is more. I tried to focus it more on the people outside the political conventions who were there either to support or to protest, and I let their interview clips, for the most part, dictate where the story went. And I'm sure some people are going to, you're talking about politics, some people are going to get mad because I didn't include something. Some people are going to get mad because I did include something, or I didn't spend enough time on one topic versus another. But I honestly feel like I was very fair because I personally think that both political parties are not for the people.
I agree. I'm a big third party guy.
Yeah, that is what a lot of the protesters had to say. So that's kind of the direction the video went. Now, with that said, I think that as it relates to, there's any potential crackdown, I hope there's not going to be. I don't think there's going to be. I think the biggest issue was that it does appear that a lot of the crackdown over the past 4 to 8 years was very one-sided. and that's kind of the issue. Like, if you supported one political candidate, you could say the most outlandish, untrue things you wanted.
Yeah.
If you supported another, your account was getting flagged on social media. I made friends with a lot of historic reenactors while making the Fort William Henry documentary, and a bunch of guys who were in a reenactment group of a Connecticut militia during the American War for Independence had their account suspended because of the word militia.
Huh. So
Even though they're historic reenactors trying to preserve the history of the United States War for Independence, they had their accounts banned from Facebook.
well, it's like, and I'm not gonna, I won't use the word, but I mean, you can't use the N word. You can't, even if you were doing a documentary on slavery and you were reading from someone's historic account of, owning someone, you can't use the word rape. Apparently, you have to say sexual assault or something, some kind, which is so silly because we know what you're talking about. I mean, euphemisms just, especially 10, 20, 50 years later, just seem awfully silly when people look back at these things.
Yeah, some of it I feel like you said, it is definitely silly. Well, your N word example, like on YouTube, their terms of use specifically state if it's in a lyric, it's fine. But so, like at these political conventions, there was an exchange where that word was used at a Black Lives Matter protest, and I made the choice not to include it. It turns out there was ultimately a better exchange between the two people who were arguing. Um, and that video did get flagged to not be suitable for monetization.
Hmm.
I was able to appeal it, and it did get approved.
Hmm.
So I think, based on my experience, which I haven't had, knock on wood, I haven't had many videos get flagged as unsuitable for monetization, but I do think they're erring on the side of caution. It is mostly automated, and in a lot of cases, people are going overboard and abusing these terms, and they're using them just to be shocking and to be salacious. Whereas in the instance of my newest video, it's very clearly a documentary about political discourse and historical relevance in this country. So when the actual human being reviewed the video, they said, "Oh yeah, this is fine."
Mm.
How can you ban something that the president of the United States said?
When I was first started these interviews, my eighth or ninth interview. Now I've got over 400. I did something on like film noirs that were in public domain, and so they're on YouTube, public domain. They're listed as public domain on Wikipedia or all these other wiki commons and whatnot. So I was using 10-second clips just to introduce what it was, and it got flagged. One of them by some asshole in Germany with some German production company. It's like, okay, well, even if it is somehow you have the rights in Germany, I'm in America. Why? It just seems this copyright claimant that you get a lot of shady characters that just use that as a weapon.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like in the United States as a whole, and certainly as it relates to online copyright infringement, the entire system is broken. It's too easy. People think just because they can quickly download and steal something. I've had people download my videos and then re-upload them to their own YouTube channel, and obviously I give them a copyright strike. If you just, if you made a reaction video,
Yeah.
and I don't feel that you have done enough to change it and you showed my entire video, I'll give people the 7-day notice, like, okay, we just disagree. But people just re-upload and then I give them a copyright strike, and they'll send me an email, saying, "Oh, I was just a fan of it and wanted to preserve it online." And it's like, yeah, it's already online. It's on my channel. They're just blatantly stealing and trying to take advantage of loopholes because unfortunately, YouTube and all of these platforms, they don't care.
Yeah.
They if I steal, I don't know, we'll just say an Avengers movie, I upload it to YouTube, and somehow I don't get flagged, or YouTube says, "Oh, this isn't monetized. You can't make money off of this." It might still stay up there because YouTube still gets all the money from the commercials.
Do you think that there's a better model than YouTube? Like Vimeo failed pretty much. You can't make money off of Vimeo, I don't think. But is there a better type of model? Is there an opening that a company could come along and end basically the YouTube monopoly?
Um, I mean, I do think there's the potential. I just think they need the tricky part is getting the public awareness. And I would think that it would need to be kind of curated to some degree. Like somehow you need to set yourself apart.
Mm.
Like admittedly, I've watched I've only ever watched a TikTok video that was on another platform.
Yeah.
I've never actually gone to TikTok.
Yeah.
But they came along and they offered something new.
Mm.
And then, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, they're all trying to copy this.
But
And
they're overall they're more dumbed down than YouTube because TikTok started with like just 20-second videos. You'll see some little girl twirling her curls, 20 million views or something.
yeah, well, that's what I mean. So it's like they offered something new, which personally doesn't appeal to me at all.
Mm.
But I think in order to combat, or be a competitor to YouTube, another platform would need to come along and do something different. And it might be to say, hey, you can't put makeup tutorials on here. You can't put prank videos where people are going into the Home Depot and throwing a
Oh
bucket
yeah,
over
yeah.
a total stranger's
I've
head
seen that.
and
Yeah.
essentially assaulting a total stranger in
Mm.
public.
Yeah.
Like they need to, that might be what is needed to say, hey, if you're basically breaking the law and being a disrespectful schmuck, you can't put it on our platform. And that might be what would be that sets them apart, and people would
Yeah,
gravitate towards that.
if you're interviewing a congressman or something that talks about something or quotes someone else, they'll flag you. But some other idiot can come along and dump a garbage can on someone or shoot someone with crazy spray or whatever they call it, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of ridiculous.
so one of the things that you say in your I guess you call it the demo reel or the sizzle reel is how you interested in shamanism, and I want to talk about some of the videos that you have on. I guess we would call them paranormal or supernatural stuff. But what was your interest in shamanism that you mentioned?
Um, I well, my wife is her ancestry is from the Andes,
Mm.
and she actually practices, Andean traditional medicine, and so that was basically my introduction to it. And uh, Traveling with her to visit some of her family members in South America. I had been to South America before, and learned about it. I actually went there to go snowboarding years ago. In the North American summer is their winter, so that was like my first introduction to some of it. And then after meeting my wife, and like I said, she practices some of these traditions, and I just find it fascinating. To me, it's the same as any other belief system. I mean, millions, billions of people think that Moses parted the Red Sea. I find that fascinating too. Um, they believe that Moses spoke to a burning bush, and so all of these ideas. There's the Hindu belief system. There's all sorts of ancient belief systems that I find fascinating, and I'm just genuinely curious about them. One thing in particular that I find fascinating about, like, shamanism, whether it's, I'll just say both of the Americas. North and South America. Not to generalize because they all have their own traditions. There has been and is some overlap. I don't know whether that was always the case or whether the overlap was introduced in modern times, modern even being 200 years ago. Um, but the one thing that I really appreciate and respect is their knowledge of natural medicines and natural remedies. And to me, I find that fascinating. I find their belief systems interesting, and I just like learning new things. I'm learning about cultures and people that I have no idea about, whether it's a shaman or a medicine person, curandero in South America, or a guy living in a train tunnel in New York City.
So you also have some videos on things like UFOs, Bigfoot, the Montauk Project. Having grown up in Queens, that's like Plum Island, and they were doing all this wacky stuff. Supposedly, you have one on a giant megalith. I think that's in New England, or was it upstate New York? So
Yeah,
let's
Hudson
talk
Valley.
about let's talk about some of that. Let's start with the megalith. So it seems to me that this was something that was like just the consequence of the glaciers retreating. You listen to some of the people there, the true believers. They think that the rock is turned this way and it's pointing towards the North Star, or it's got and you're going to get beams of light. They have these sort of like Hollywood ideas that somehow everything depends upon this rock just being in that particular place where the glacier left it. When you do something like that, do you ever want to say to them, or have you said like, well, wasn't it just the glacier that did that?
Yeah, well, in that particular video, um, there was a couple times that I think I included it in the video. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I asked the guy a question, being like, well, couldn't it just be this? And, or how do you explain this aspect, in general, with that type of stuff, it's like, depending on what documentary I'm making, they all need a different approach,
Yeah.
And so for something like that, or for something, like people who are out looking for Bigfoot, it's like these people were kind enough to give me their time to invite me into their world. I'm trying to just share their perspective and also try to understand it for myself and be respectful. Like, to me, the easy thing to do is to just kind of ridicule people, or like, I'm not interested in just arguing with people and trying to bicker with them and be like, oh, I'm going to get you with the gotcha questions. It's like, let's just, with that megalith, I think that's a poor example of something that might be aligned to the sun, you know? Um, but there are other examples that are better. And so I do think it's at least a possibility. That one, yeah, it's probably glacial erratic, and was left there by a receding glacier. But like, let's just say in, mainstream archaeology claims that east of the Mississippi, generally, Native Americans did not work with stone, which we know for a fact isn't true, because in Miami, is a circle that they discovered, I believe, in 2011, where holes were drilled into the bedrock. And it's like, well, okay, well, how do you explain that if no one worked in stone east of the Mississippi? Some of it is like, uh, when settlers came here in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, certainly in New York and New England, they weren't they didn't care about preserving what they found. It's like, oh, hey, we found a stone structure. I need those stones to build a stone wall. I need those stones to make a foundation for my house, whatever it might be. Even where I grew up, um, right near West Point, Little North, there's a fort called Fort Montgomery, and there's a highway built right through the middle of it. You know, like even up until modern times, preserving even United States history
Yeah.
has not been a priority at all. So I do believe that there are possibilities that, you know, there are stone structures that do have historic significance. Whether that one is or not, I don't know. But like I said, in that particular video, I asked the questions. I don't need to, ridicule people or, it's just like, hey, you're nice enough to talk to me. Like I said before, this is another human being we share the planet with. We don't need to ridicule him. And is what he believes really any crazier than Noah rounding up two of every animal,
Right.
putting it on an ark, and saving the entire planet like that? Because that's a little nutty too, you know?
Well, a lot of that has to do with a modern white society not thinking that ancient non-white human beings could do A, B, or C. This is why you get these crazy things about aliens came to build the pyramids because, of course, the ancient Egyptians couldn't have done it by themselves by just using muscle or whatnot. Um, I know I had interviewed some years ago a woman about her belief in the afterlife, and I remember she started talking about it, and then she just went off on a tangent. She started talking about astral projection, and she was got like, I've been out past Pluto, and I'm like, really? And I said, well, this was before the flyby of Pluto about a decade ago, and I said, well, did it ever occur to you maybe to write down what it looked like? Because apparently the real Pluto, there's a giant heart-like structure. It looks like a giant Valentine's heart or something. It's an uplifted plane. And I said, I mean, if you had done that and gotten it on record, 10 years before this was discovered, I mean, it wouldn't have been absolute proof, but it would have been certainly something leaning very favorably to astral projection. And that thought came to me when I was watching the video about the fellow who claims to have shot a Bigfoot with his buddies, and then the next morning, no Bigfoot, no blood, no gun casings or whatnot. And I was like, come on. I mean, if you are sure you shot something and you're taking a shot at this thing, knowing that it's probably not a human being, I, you know, what was your thought about that? Because that seems to be not that it's a gotcha moment, but it seems to me there that person should have sort of reflected and like, well, maybe I had a bad dream, and maybe my buddies and I just drank a little too much.
Yeah. Well, so that's another video that's actually um, part of a feature length documentary about kind of the
Still to be
broader.
produced. Still to be
Yes,
produced.
yeah, that one will. I just put together my content schedule for the first half of the year
Uh,
the other day, and that one will probably be like, I want to say maybe April it's coming out. I
okay.
don't recall off the top of my head, but I was in the middle of making that when I got pulled back away to the anchor outs, the people who were living on the boats in San Francisco. But that guy, this some parts of it will be in the full documentary. The night before that interview, I got invited to this large camp out that a friend of mine invited me to, um, where this my friend Matt, he has a YouTube channel which is all about kind of looking for Bigfoot. Um, he put together, I think it was 25 different people were there, and they're all some were like me, other filmmakers. Some people are skeptical, some people are true believers, and they all have wildly different beliefs about what they think Bigfoot is. And the night before, that guy James, um, I was hanging out around the campfire with him, and he's, telling me some stories. And some of the other people, I mean, they're literally just laughing right in this guy's face with some of the crazy stuff he was saying. So he knows that people don't believe him. He knows how crazy it sounds. I don't, who knows? To me, it's like it's fun. They're just fun people to hang out with. It's fun to kind of. I enjoy making the animations of the Bigfoot, making a monster movie. When I was
Yeah.
a kid, I always loved the old Ray Harryhausen and wanted to make monster movies. So it's like this is kind of my way of doing that a little bit, and
Yeah,
you know,
the only reason I bring it up is not to make fun of people like him or the woman who projected herself past Pluto, but it's like we, because, and not to get political, but because we are in this age of Trump, wild claims are made without any evidence, whether it's about paranormal stuff or whether it's about uh, taking Greenland or something from sovereign people. It, it just seems to me that there's very little that people, are held to the fire for. I mean, their feet to the fire. I mean, I can claim that I have some magical power or whatnot. The spoon benders. Remember those magicians who could say they bend spoons, and a guy like, what's his name, James Randi, showed that it's a
yeah, the
very simple
amazing,
trick. And
yeah.
so do you ever worry though I mean, not that you would censor someone like him or like this Pluto lady, but do you ever worry that you have to sort of cast them in a way that you're not endorsing whatever belief?
Yeah, I I try to when I add in my narration or since I'm the presenter of my videos, when I am speaking directly, I choose my words very carefully, and I try to make it clear that I don't necessarily believe what these people are saying. I might not necessarily agree with it. I might not agree with, someone's lifestyle in another video I do, but this is just this is how it is, and I try to see from their perspective. Now, like in the instance of James, I've never seen a Bigfoot. I spent my entire childhood hanging out in the woods. Try to spend a lot of time hanging out in the woods as an adult. Have I encountered weird things? Yes, but I also have normal explanations for some of those weird things. That'll be in another documentary at a certain point about people who looking for Bigfoot and whatnot. But I feel like, I mean, people want to do what they want to do in today's day and age. This is like everybody's kind of in their own silo, their own world. Like I didn't know who Mr. Beast was until I started trying to learn more about YouTube 3 years ago. And it turns out this guy puts out every video he puts out. There's 100 to 200 million people are watching it.
Yeah.
I never heard of the guy. Like so it's like everything is so segmented that like we'll use the Bigfoot world or the woman you were speaking about with the astral projection. She's appealing to her potential audience. The Bigfoot people are appealing to they've found their little tribe. They found their like-minded community, and they're having fun. They're not harming anything. As it relates to kind of what you were saying about the Trump world. I mean, there's disinformation and made up nonsense coming from all angles, and there has been, as you pointed out, for years. Like with you know, what was it, the amazing Kreskin who was bending the spoon, and then you've got James Randi coming along and debunking it.
Yeah.
Like
Uri Geller was the guy, an Israeli guy back in the 70s. He was the big spoon bending.
spoon bender.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah,
yeah.
that's right. And then I mean the not to go too far down a political rabbit hole, but we now know that the whole Gulf of Tonkin incident was completely made up.
I was just
Like
telling that to my wife. I said, Trump is bad, but I said, was LBJ any better? I mean,
yeah,
that the Vietnam Indochina stuff killed 3-5 million people, according to some people. That's pretty bad.
yeah, yeah. It's like we're. It's not that we are being in my opinion, it's not that we're being deceived more in this day and age. It's just that we now know we're being deceived more. You
So
know.
what is the core philosophy behind all of your videos and documentaries? Whether you're talking about Bigfoot, whether you're talking about people on the bay, whether you're talking about the some historical incident, or whether you're talking about underground dwellers, is there some Swansonian philosophy that you want people, if they come across your videos 500 years when they're flying to Saturn for vacation to say, oh, this old guy 500 years ago, he was doing some interesting stuff. I gotta, what motivates the stuff?
Honestly, like I think that my overarching kind of artistic philosophy, for lack of a better term, is to just kind of share, like when I'm making documentaries, I'm trying to learn more about a new topic, a topic that I find interesting, and I'm trying to understand it and trying the best I can to see it from a different perspective, whether it's I'm reading historical texts, firsthand accounts written in a journal 270 years ago, trying to understand that guy's perspective, or I'm trying to understand the perspective of someone living on a boat in part of San Francisco Bay, and then trying to present that in a way that hopefully a viewer can try to do the same thing. I feel like there's so much negativity on the internet that I am trying my best not to contribute to that. Trying to show like, hey, look, this is just another human being. They live a different life than you. They have different interests than you, but you're really not that different. And I would hope that that's coming across. Unfortunately, if you look in the comment section of some of my videos, I'm doing a pretty shit job because there's a lot of people that just show up to just be negative.
Well, that's one of the reasons I've never put comments on, because I don't have the time to do that. You take what someone's offering or not. Let me just ask finally then, where do you see yourself 5, 10, 20 years down the line? Do you have a particular golden project that you're saying maybe it's exposing LBJ and the Vietnam War start, or it's doing something about some ancient Mississippian Indian tribe that what is your general plan for the future, and is there a specific, if I only had 1 year to do something, this is what I got to get done?
Um, Ooh, honestly, if I only have 1 year, like I don't know, if there was going to be an asteroid that was coming to hit the planet or something, like
Yeah.
I would be like Kane from Kung Fu and just wander the earth, but I probably wouldn't be as helpful. Just just go and meet people and enjoy life. But uh, right now I'm actually trying to be, hopefully, a little more strategic this year that we're currently in. Um, and I mean, I hate to say it, it's like I have a lot of projects that I filmed, but I haven't edited.
Mm.
So like my next several months is trying to kind of crank through some of those, and uh, still put out things that like I find interesting. Hopefully, other people will find interesting. As for like dream projects, I have quite a few, and I'm hoping that I can hopefully in the near future make this a little bit more financially stable and sustainable to kind of pursue some of them, because they don't necessarily require huge budgets.
Yeah.
They just require enough income for me to take a month or two off to go and film them.
Time and freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for spending about an hour speaking with me. I'll link to the Erik Swanson YouTube channel. I encourage people to go there and contact Erik if they like his stuff. So again, thanks for spending about an hour speaking with me.
Hey, Dan, thank you, man. This was a lot of fun.